Hi, I'm Laurie and welcome to The Patient is Always Right. This is where myself and Derek, Ignite CEO and founder, have unfiltered real talk with guests from the aesthetics, medical, dental and wellness industries. No fluff, just the truth about building a business, facing challenges and working with patients in a fast-moving, ever-changing industry. We're bringing you the highs, the lows and everything in between. If you want honest conversations and real stories behind the success, you're in the right place. Welcome to The Patient is Always Right. Today we're joined by Vanessa L Brown, an entrepreneur, aesthetic clinic owner, and head of sales and marketing for Erchonia across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. At just 21, Vanessa took over her family's wellness business and transformed it into VL Aesthetics, now one of Cumbria's leading clinics, but she didn't stop there. She's built an international career in medical aesthetics, travels the world, speaking at different industry events, and somehow still finds the time to host her own podcast, The Late Late Aesthetic Show. Known for her confidence and no-nonsense business mindset, Vanessa is here to give us the real talk on running a clinic, the future of aesthetics, and why, if she had to do it again, she might not. Hi, Vanessa.
Hello.
Welcome to The Patient is Always Right. We're very excited to have you on today.
I'm so excited. We're going to really dive into everything that the patient knows, needs to know.
I know.
What they think they know.
We've got a lot to cover, like genuinely a lot to cover. I have so many things to cover. But I thought it'd be nice to start with sort of an icebreaker. So I've got a quick fire round for you. So try and give your immediate answer. So I'm going to start with the classic. Botox or polynucleotides?
Polynucleotides.
Okay. Massive social media following or a small high-value client base?
High-value client base.
Nice. Little fun one. Tea or champagne?
Champagne.
Yes. Girl after my own
All day
heart there.
long.
I know exactly what my answer was now. Spontaneity or routine?
Spontaneity.
Nice. Unlimited budget, but no creative control, or full creative control with a limited budget?
Full creative control with a limited budget.
Nice. Perfect. Do you know what? Weirdly enough, they were the same answers, like exactly the same
Seriously?
answers. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. We're on the same page
Exactly.
then.
I think particularly for the creative control one, because you can create something out of nothing, but
Exactly.
it's hard to create.
And that will be more valuable in the long
100%.
run.
And that's how most people start, right?
Otherwise, if you've got a big budget, you're going to blow most of the budget.
Exactly.
It's like, you know, when you watch like The Apprentice, for example, and when they get to like the last two and they're like, what do you need the money for? And they're like, I need 50 grand for marketing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what are you going to do with the 50 grand?
It's so true.
This is it. So you better to have a clear, concise, structured plan rather than just going in and wasting and blowing the money.
I love that you mentioned Apprentice already, because you know I'm going to ask questions about that later.
Love it.
I love a bit of Apprentice. So I've got a couple of questions for you, just to for the audience to get to know you. So I feel like you're pretty much a aesthetic business celeb, I would say. Like, genuinely, I feel like everyone knows of you if they don't know you. So what's something that most people in the aesthetic industry don't know about you?
I think maybe they don't know how young I was when I started in business as a whole. You know, I think people look at my age, I'm 29, and they think, oh, what does she actually know about the industry? She's young. I mean, I started in business when I was 8 years old, and I was selling celebrity autographs on eBay.
Love that.
So what I was doing, I was basically writing to actors in like EastEnders, Casualty, Neighbours, and I was writing as like a fan, and I was getting their autograph for free. And then I was selling it for like £20-30 for each autograph. This was back in the days when obviously
how did you think of that when you were 8?
I have no idea. Like,
mad.
I don't even know what the thought process was. I think I really enjoyed watching like Casualty. I enjoyed watching Neighbours, and I maybe wanted their autographs, but then I kept writing to them and they kept sending me autographs. I was like, I've got too many autographs now. Like, what am I going to do with all these autographs? And then I worked out if you wrote to them with a different name, for example, like my brother was asking, they'd send you some more. So I was just building up this stock of celebrity autographs. And I used to like control it all with like an Excel spreadsheet. So I would know like how much money that I'd like made during that time.
Way.
Yeah.
Okay, so you literally were a businesswoman from the age of 8. That is mad.
It's like in my genes. I think like I naturally don't think that I could do anything else. I just think that it's in me, and I absolutely love it as well.
No, exactly. And obviously it's sort of set you up for where you are now. Yeah. That is mad. Love that. So yeah, you've said it already. You're a clinic owner, aesthetic business leader, podcast host. So which one of the roles would you say actually challenges you the most?
I think still being a business owner. I think being a business owner, you can never leave the business. I think sometimes you're of the false pretense that as soon as you come out of the business, you know, everything will be fine no matter how well you've set up processes. But at the end of the day, being a business owner is a full-time, it's not even a full-time job, it's like your whole life.
Yeah.
It's great to remove yourself from the business and the business can still operate and run without you physically being there. That's fantastic. But don't take for granted that it's still your business. Things that you think may come natural to somebody else don't necessarily always come natural. And even with your team and stuff, you constantly have to be on top of that to keep your standards where they are. So yeah, I think being a business owner, that ultimately challenges me.
I mean, the fact that you have been able to build this business and step away and do other things is amazing. It's almost like unheard of in the aesthetic industry.
Massively. And I speak to so many doctors in the industry that would love to be able to go away from the business. But the thing is, and I don't necessarily think it's so much of a problem, but the thing is, if they build their business around them, patients automatically want to see them. It doesn't matter how many other specialists you have within the business, they still want to see you because it's your name on the door. Whereas with my business, I didn't build it around my name. Yes, it's called VL Aesthetics. My name is Vanessa Lana, but it's not necessarily built around me, like personally. So I can leave the business and people they don't need to see me. But they've still got that, they see regular practitioners, so there's still that trust. So I think, yeah, there's that point as well.
No, honestly, it's incredible. Like, that's definitely one of the hardest things about running a business, is not making it about yourself and stepping away. So amazing. So your incredible go-getter attitude, work ethic, these are all things that I think people kind of know about you and admire you for. Has that always been in you? Is that just part of your personality?
Yeah, it's definitely part of my personality. I've always been one to step out my comfort zone. So like when I was 20 years old, I went to Dubai on my own. I lived there for 6 months, part of my university degree. Then I came home for a week and then I went to New York for 2 months doing a PR internship, all at the age of 20. And now I look back and I'm like, whoa, like even walking around London now, I'm a bit like jaded whether I want to walk around on my own. But then I was in New York on my own for 2 months. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's really interesting, like you say about London. I guess as you get older as well, I feel like you get more fear around things. When you're young, you'll just do it.
This is so true, and definitely your risk tolerance level decreases as you age. I think embrace being young, take risks, take like opportunities. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, you've not really got much to lose. So yeah.
That's such a good point. Yeah, that's really interesting. I would say I'm exactly the same. I'm definitely more fearful now as I'm getting older, and I'm just like, no, you still got it. You're still young enough. Keep going. So have you ever had a moment where you felt like completely out of your depth, and how did you handle that?
I think, like, going back to when I first started the business, so bit of background about the business. So I graduated with a master's in international business management. So my background isn't medical. It's not a medical background. And what happened was I took over a family business, which was like a health and wellness clinic. It's in the north of England. I think that people weren't ready for advancements in healthcare. We were doing like dry water massage beds, like vibration training. So the business needed a restructure. So I then, when I was 21 and I graduated, I was one of those people that I don't know what I want to do. So then my mum turned around to me and she was like, look, you can take over the family business. She was at that point in her life where she kind of wanted to take a bit of a step back. And I was like, I'm not working for you though. Like, that's not happening. And she was like, no, I was like, I'm not reporting into you. Like, if you want me to do this, like, I'll do it my own way. And she was like, that's fine, like full free reins to do it. But then I was kind of like, why did I just say that? Like, but I mean, look, I've always had the support of my parents, which is great. So that I literally just jumped in with both feet. And I can remember sitting there on the first day that I officially started being like, where do you start with everything? Because it can be overwhelming. And even now, because, I do so many things, it can get to a point where I'm like, whoa, like slow down a little bit. So now I very much just structure things, what's most important, deal with that first, and then, make a plan after that. So it was kind of like, where do you start? Because I think when you start a business, you want to achieve your end goal like next week. But it doesn't happen like that. It takes time to get there, and you have to be patient with it.
So you then transformed it into VL Aesthetics. So can you tell me about that journey? Like, what made you decide aesthetics if it was wellness before?
So I've always been passionate for health and beauty, even though I don't necessarily have a background in having a certification for beauty or a medical qualification. And at the time that my mum had the health and wellness business, there was one beauty room in there. So we were already doing basic beauty treatments like nails, waxing, massage. But to do those basic treatments, you don't really earn a lot of money from that whatsoever. And at the time where we were in Carlisle, there was absolutely no one that was offering aesthetic treatments, anything that is advanced and is actually going to give you a result. So there was a real niche and there was a real gap in the market at that time. So then we purchased our first machine, which was like a radio frequency skin tightening technology. And we actually still use it to this day. So the results from it are very, very good. And we really got going with that. And we generated a return on investment, I think, within about 4 months. So that's really, really great for our first venture into high-end, I would say, capital equipment. And then we bought a facial machine, which again is a brilliant facial machine called the Geneo. We bought that, got a return on investment with it as well. And because no one was doing what we were doing, we were able to get a significant retention of customers that were kept coming back. And then we expanded from just having 2 treatment rooms. We've now got 10 treatment rooms. So this has been over the space of like 7 years now, so we've expanded over time. I think it was an organic change, still keeping that health and wellness element, but turning it more into aesthetics, and it happened really naturally. And when we first started, and we still do actually, we have a really great core team. We've got some great staff, and they do a fantastic job, and they're still with us now.
It's really interesting actually, because like the wellness aspect of it is done like a 360, and now it's like at the forefront, longevity wellness blending in with aesthetics. We'll go into more of that a bit later because obviously you're in that world, so I've got some questions around that.
Great.
But I've got a very blunt question for you. With everything taking in like the past and where you are now, would you open a clinic now from scratch again?
No.
I thought that might be your answer.
If I could change one thing, it would probably be that the clinic was maybe open in a different location that not necessarily was Carlisle. However, that's the way it was meant to be. It's there. But if I could change one thing, I think I would have moved it to a different area in the UK. The reason being, there's a big north and south divide in the UK. In the south, I find people are so much more interested in their health. They're interested in wanting to live longer. They're interested in reversing the internal aging process. Whereas up north, that mindset shift hasn't yet happened. So it's kind of just waiting for it to happen. Things that I would absolutely love to introduce, things like cryo chambers, like hyperbaric oxygen, ozone, all of these things, they really just won't work there. So it's about knowing your location, and just because you like it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work there. So I think as well, at the stage that I am in my life, I don't think I would want to do that. I think because at the time it's like starting a business, you need to be really enthusiastic. You need to give it 100%. So I think at the stage that I am in my life, I also wouldn't do it now. But if I could change anything, it would probably be in a different location.
Interesting. Yeah, it's one of those things actually with clinics. It's quite a hard industry, and I think there's lots of competition, but not just that, because the competition thing is actually, I think, sometimes an internal thing. Like you blame your competitor down the road who's got the same device as you, but actually it's a little bit more complicated than that. Yeah. I think it's just the business aspect of it. It's hard to run a business. It is all consuming.
And you can't replicate yourself either. So would you not rather just have one location that's doing very, very well rather than having 3 locations and you've got to spread yourself? It's difficult. And I admire the practitioners that have been able to do that successfully, because that is by no means easy whatsoever.
I think the fact that you can even just step away from it, from an outsider looking in, is very impressive. Like, I mean, you've obviously built up a good business. The fundamental of the business is good, that it doesn't need you physically in that building to run it. That's, I think, some of the hardest lessons that people learn is like, oh gosh, I really don't want to be here 24/7, but they need them there. One of the things that you've done really well is you've still stayed within aesthetics. You've still managed to use that knowledge and that niche to actually grow the other side of your interest in your life, which is amazing. So talking about Erchonia, so taking a little bit back a bit, tell us about that. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so I got involved with Erchonia. It was during the lockdown. So it was so I officially started with them in 2021. And I came across them in 2020. I'm sure it was towards the back end of 2020. And it was, again, in between things opening up, closing down, all of that was happening. And they were on the front cover of the Aesthetics Journal with their emerald laser. And it was actually my mum that spotted it at the time, because me and my mum were very involved in the business. And my mum was like, that looks really great. We should find out some more information about it. So we did. We found out some more information. And at the time, we only had the radio frequency device for skin tightening, for body treatments. And we were having to turn away a lot of patients by saying, look, you know, you need to lose some weight before we can actually do anything with you contouring wise. So we came across the Emerald, which was a fully automated device, didn't require any operator skill, and it could treat up to 40 BMI. For fat loss. So we were like, that's really interesting, because also going through the pandemic, we didn't really want treatments that required, you know, such close contact. You wanted something where you didn't necessarily have to have anyone physically present, and the Emerald ticked all the boxes with that. So we looked at it. Obviously, it's quite a large capital equipment investment. It wasn't the right time to buy because we were in between lockdowns and we didn't know how long we would be open, etc., etc. And then in early 2021, so maybe like the February of 2021, Simon, who's the managing director, was asking if my mum knew anyone to like launch the Emerald in the UK. And my mum was like, well, have you considered Vanessa? And Simon was like, well, is she available? Like, I didn't think she was available, because obviously I was heavily involved with VL at the time. But with VL Aesthetics, I was at that point in my career where I thought that I'd built it up to a certain point. I didn't necessarily have to be there every single day. I wanted a new challenge. I was getting a bit bored just being in Carlisle. It wasn't enough for me, so I wanted something else. And so yeah, I went back and forth with like conversations with Simon. And then he took me on, and then we launched the Emerald in September 2021. And now in the UK, there's over 50 clinics that have the Emerald. So that's how I got involved. And yeah, it's been a great progress. And then last year we launched in 5 new countries. So now I'm able to travel, train partners that we have about how to sell the device, do press events in different places. So it's really, really great that, you know, the whole Emerald brand is getting spread out there.
So you've obviously worked with clinics across not just the UK, but multiple countries. Would you say there's a major difference in the approach with somewhere like Dubai, for example? Because I've noticed a lot of people are moving to that side of the world. The UAE is booming. A lot of people are splitting their time between Dubai and the UK, like aesthetic practitioners.
Yeah.
What is it about Dubai and the UAE that is like drawing people there?
I think it's just such an innovative place. I think it's kind of like the hub of innovation. You go there, everything seems to be that they're planning for things 30 years ahead. They seem to be more forward thinking than, let's say, the UK, for example. They seem to have a plan. And I mean, obviously it's sunny, beautiful place to live. And my friend Mona, she has in fact, in my opinion, it's the best clinic in Dubai. It's called BioLite. And Mona is like an OG in Dubai. She's had that clinic now for 20 years. So she's been there when there was absolutely nothing there whatsoever. And she's really honed in on that, like absolutely, because she's got respect there. She's got respect, she's got trust, she's got the reputation. And you can't override experience, you can't override reputation. And what they're doing at BioLite now, so they've obviously grown the clinic over the years, and what they do is amazing. They've got a whole like longevity and functional medicine side of the business now, which when Mona first started doing that, I'm sure she won't mind me saying, but 2 years ago, there was still education to take place, and a functional medicine doctor, like they had to like basically get people to go and see her, but now she's fully booked, and that she's had to get somebody extra as well because of the demand. So I think education's a great thing, because if you stick to it, people start clicking on.
We do have a lot to learn in the UK still, and it's because maybe we're not as open to learning. I'm not sure what it is.
I mean, look, we're quite reserved as a nation, and we're quite hesitant. We'll try new things, but we won't trust it and talk about it until we actually see the benefits ourselves. But having said that, the UAE, they look a lot at what's happening in London and what all the top clinics in London are doing. So there's definitely a crossover. Keeping on top of the education, I can't stress that enough. And I think as well, when clinics are buying a specific brand, they think that a patient's going to come to them because of that brand. A patient comes to you because of the trust that they have in you as a clinic and a practitioner. The brand is what they trust you because you've picked that brand because you know it's good. But patients not coming to you just because they've seen that you use a specific brand of filler, for example. you're telling them I'm using this filler because of X, Y, and Z, and it's your job as a professional and an expert to tell them why you're using that brand.
Completely. It's not about the brand. Like, you're just using the brand as a vehicle, but it is you that is literally the one that's the selling point.
And this is why with a clinic, you need to get your staff using the skincare you stock. You need to get your whole team having the treatments, making sure they've tried all the treatments. And that's not just the therapists that are working with the devices or the skincare brand, but it's your front of house as well. If your front of house have no idea what it feels like, what to expect, how are they going to talk to your patients when they call you up and ask about something?
Exactly.
Everyone needs to experience all the treatments you do.
And actually, what people forget is the person on the front desk or behind the phone is the person that's talking to the patient the most or the client the most.
Yeah.
So they should be the one that gets everything. Like, give them everything, because they will rave about it and they are your biggest advocate.
Exactly.
Talking about Erchonia, so obviously we're seeing a shift in general sort of weight loss with Ozempic and Mounjaro. How does Emerald fit into that? Have you found that it's like a complementary treatment, or is it something that's completely standalone?
It's definitely a standalone, but it is a complementary treatment. I mean, we can't deny the fact that clinics are prescribing certain patients Ozempic and Mounjaro. That's happening. We're not going to stop that whatsoever. And I do actually think the two work very well together, because obviously the likes of Mounjaro or Ozempic are designed for like weight loss, weight management. Whereas when you lose weight, you're not exactly going to tell your body where the fat's coming off. So targeted fat reduction treatments like the Emerald will get the results in the area that the patient is most like concerned about. I mean, if for example you wanted to lose fat around the abdomen area, just because you're losing weight, your body's not going to go, oh, by the way, I'll reduce the size of the fat cells in the abdomen. It doesn't happen like that. If it did, it'd be great, but it just doesn't work that way. So there's definitely a place for Emerald, because as well, you don't want to lose so much weight that your skin becomes loose. So skin tightening treatments come in really, really nicely, but also targeted fat reduction, because it's shrinking the circumference area within that region. So the patient psychologically starts to see the improvements over the area that, you know, concerns them the most when they look in the mirror. And if a patient sees the results like that, they're more likely to commit to any weight loss plan or lifestyle change plan. They're more likely to commit to that. And also with the Emerald, it's not just improving the aesthetic appearance, it's improving the overall internal health of the patient. So what it's doing, it's shrinking the fat cell down, targeting the mitochondria, increasing the amount of ATP production within the cell. So it's energizing the cell. And if your cells are energized, they're going to begin to perform and act like younger cells. So it's working internally on a cellular aging process.
That's really interesting as well, because I think you touched on it there about it being complementary. And do you think, because I think clinics will eventually start to actually prescribe this, and I'm seeing it in a couple of places already. And I suppose like, if you, the advantage if you're in a clinic and let's say you have the Emerald is you've got the foundation. So by offering that treatment, it's like you're also setting them up for more success. Do you think that's something that you'll see more kind of
absolutely
coming?
And I think definitely. I think just because the whole longevity, the whole biohacking space is really, really coming into play, and we're thinking about cells in a very different way. We don't want to kill cells, whereas years ago with the likes of like cryolipolysis or excessive heating that's designed to destroy and kill the fat cell, we're thinking, well, why are we doing that? Number one, the fat within the body plays a very vital role. It manages hormone levels, hunger levels, energy levels. So why do we want to kill and destroy that fat cell? Also, fat's part of the endocrine system, so you're not going to start freezing off kidneys or like livers or anything like that. We're not going to do that. And the doctors that are on board with Emerald, they really understand that shift, and it's amazing to see them educate their patients, because they're able to provide their patients with a treatment that's not only improving external and making them feel better in their dresses, jeans, but they're telling, you know, the patients are coming in saying they're sleeping better, they have more energy, they feel more motivated in their everyday life. So it's about doing something that's more than just an aesthetic treatment.
I guess switching the narrative slightly. So what do patients want from aesthetic clinics? And now I'm talking like as with your Erchonia hat on, because I think obviously you can talk about it from VL, but what is it that people want? Like, what ultimately, when they're coming to a clinic, what do they want? And I'm not talking about treatments, I'm talking about like experience and everything.
It's the whole experience, because a patient wants to come in. If you think a patient's coming into your clinic for the first time, they're apprehensive. The reason they're going to be apprehensive is because something concerns them, it's something that, you know, an insecurity for them that they really want to change and improve. So you want to make them feel welcome, because believe it or not, they've probably tried to contact you many, many times before they've actually made the conscious effort to come into the clinic that day for a consultation. So you want to make them feel welcome when they come in. You want to have like a homely environment where they feel relaxed. You don't want them to feel on edge, there's too many people there, because you know, they can be scared. They can be, if they've especially not had any treatments before, they don't know what to expect. And human beings, if we don't know what to expect, it makes us feel uncomfortable. So I think from the moment that patient comes in through the door, which is why never underestimate the power of a front of house team. A front of house team make that patient feel welcome. And as soon as they come in, you know, make them feel comfortable, offer them a drink. But I also think it's important to let them know about what other treatments you do in the clinic. Not straight away, because that can be overwhelming. And patients want they want value for money, and they want treatments that deliver results. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to.
This is a bit of a more like, I want to dig into your thought here, because I genuinely think there'll be a lot of people that run clinics or work in clinics that deal with this problem. And I think talking about it from your perspective as VL Aesthetics, but also Erchonia. So the beauty industry loses approximately 2.6 million in revenue over a 4-month period due to patient no-shows. Mm-hmm. And I'd pull aesthetics into that, because I imagine that they're having the same experience. Yeah. So how does your clinic personally tackle no-shows, and what advice would you share with other clinic owners on how to deal with that? Yeah,
so you have to be strict with the patient. So when we advertise for a free consultation. So we advertise for a free body or a free face consultation. Medical consultations are chargeable. So if you're going to see a nurse, for example, or a doctor, they're chargeable. But we advertise for a free consultation with an aesthetician. And that typically includes like a skin analysis or like a body analysis. But whenever we book the appointment, we take a booking like deposit, a holding deposit, which is £40. We take that, and it's redeemable against any like service products that you buy. And quite often, I've had a meeting with my clinic manager this morning, and she was saying, look, people are not wanting to book the consultation because they don't want to pay £40. And I say, well, that's absolutely fine, but tell them that we are a private clinic. If you would like to get free medical care, go on Google, go see your GP, but we're not giving you away our expertise for free. And she was saying, look, we've been having conversations on the phone with people for 20 minutes, and they're asking us all these questions that can be asked in a consultation. And I said, look, that's not a patient for us, because at the end of the day, if they're not prepared to invest £40 for a 30 to 45 minute consultation, are they really prepared to invest the prices that you would charge in clinic? So you have to be brutal in the sense that you know not every single patient is for you. And quite often, if you give a patient away your expertise, they'll go down the road and they'll use that expertise and get something so much cheaper. And look, that they're not the patients for us, which is why I always think, don't be scared of competition, like embrace competition. If you're good at what you do the best in the industry, those patients are going to come to you, and those patients are loyal patients. They're not going anywhere else. And that's key, really.
I completely agree. And I think that's something that people are scared of.
Yeah.
They're scared of hearing no, when actually it's no, they're not the right patient for you.
Exactly. So don't be scared about... So we've massively reduced the no-shows since we introduced that about a couple of years ago now.
Okay.
So before that, we used to just book free consultations, not take any charge for it. People were just like not turning up. So if they're not turning up, they're not serious.
So what would you say separates top clinics and brands in the industry from the ones that are struggling?
I think it comes down to everything in the clinic. So it's the front of house, how the front of house greet you. It's how easy you make, for example, filling in consultation forms, consent forms. Don't overcomplicate that. Obviously it's key, but don't overcomplicate it. But then it's little things like the music that's on. Like for example, when I go into VL, if the music isn't at a certain level, or I can't really hear it, that really irritates me, like really, really irritates me, because it's part of the whole journey. Like the different smells, for example, like if the diffuser's not in the right place, that really annoys me as well. Or like just be like attention to detail with like if there's anything on the floor, for example. So it's all of this these things that really, really make a massive, massive difference. Even the lighting in the rooms, for example.
When you're saying that, I'm smiling because it's like you've taken me back to running a clinic, and these were all the things I would go on and on about. Like, why do you care what smell it is? I was like, I care so much, because it's the first thing people say when they walk in. Oh, it smells amazing in here.
And the other thing that annoys me is if, like, you know, you have like marketing posters or marketing leaflets in the clinic. They should be rotated at least every 2 weeks. Like, don't just keep the same leaflets in the same area. Rotate them, rotate the banners, because if you've got someone coming in for a course of treatments, they're coming in every week, like for body treatments, for example. If they keep seeing the same thing, that just becomes normal. Whereas if you put a different poster there, for example, they're then like, oh, that's new. I've not seen that before.
Yeah.
Little things like that make such a difference. Like flowers, for example. Like, all these things matter.
They do.
They're maybe like small and trivial, but like that's what you can charge a premium for.
So a lot of clinic owners are what I call accidental clinic owners. I think that's quite a common phrase we hear. So practitioners who open their own clinic but have no business training. Do you think that's why so many clinics struggle? And do you think that's a big factor to clinic closures at the moment? Because we are seeing more of that recently.
Yeah, definitely. I think ultimately, if you're a good practitioner, you will have a patient base that will come to see you regardless of whatever you're doing. But I think because the industry is so easy to get into, you don't really need many trainings or anything like that. I think people come into the industry now thinking, oh, if I just do an injectable course, then I'm going to be really busy. But there's a lot more to running a business than that. You can't just go on one course and then expect, and people do it as like a side hobby, and then they start making some money and they're like, oh, I'll make this into a full-time career. There's good luck, I always say, but there's so many more elements to it. And again, if you're just offering injectables, that's not offering your patient everything that they need to have. They will end up eventually going elsewhere because there's so many different options. And I think when doing a consultation, you need to be able to combine treatments. You need to be able to tailor make it to that specific individual. But I also do think that sometimes people come into the industry and they're quite naive about how much it takes to actually get a business off the ground. It's like even with advertising, like I've spoken to practitioners over the years and they're like, I just don't understand why I'm not busy. I bought this machine, I did one Facebook ad and I don't have people coming in. It's like you did one ad. Do you think that we've stopped advertising 7 years later? We advertise every single month. We've perfected the way, well, I like to think the way that we do it that allows us to generate X amount of leads within that month. But do you think all of a sudden you're just going to stop advertising? Do you see Coca-Cola, do they still advertise? Of course they do. Because you have to be in people's faces.
Because obviously this is Ignite, right? We do ads. Yeah. We do marketing. We are a marketing agency for anyone that doesn't know. And yeah, it's a very common pushback. They might have done it in the past and then they're a bit like jaded by it, or they do one and they do it again and it's not as successful, but then the practices they put in place are different. So that's really interesting you mentioned that, but we'll get back to that later. So one of the hardest things about the aesthetic industry, I would say, is competition. And when I mean competition, it's also like a perception of competition, which we spoke about a bit earlier. So how does a clinic go about standing out when another clinic maybe down the road from them is offering that same treatment? Like, do they... In fact, you answer it. I'm not going to add any more to that.
I think they stand out by on social media, you need to have a presence on social media because, like it or not, that's the way that most people find out about you. Social media and Google, then they'll look at your website. So I think you need to have a really clinical website, but people need to be able to identify with you. Like, if they don't identify with you, who are they going to see? They need to be able to know that they trust you, they value you, and you're going to look after them. I think that's really, really key. So again, going back to this whole ethos, if just because the clinic down the road has the same machine or uses the same skincare brand as you, that doesn't really matter, like, at all. You need to showcase what that patient journey would be like, and you almost need to take the patient through that before they come to you, because then at least they know what to expect. So I think that that's really, really important. Showing your before and afters is really, really key as well. Although it is a struggle to get before and afters, and I feel clinic owners' pain with that, like it's hard, but at the end of the day a lot of patients don't want to showcase their results, which is fine. And getting testimonials, getting your patients to talk about their experiences within your clinic is like crucial.
So one of the most common things we hear as an outsider working with clinics is they really struggle to turn leads into conversions. And obviously for us, there's a stage, right? So we get someone leads, let's say we get them 100 leads, and they might get 20 bookings straight off the campaign. But they'll then say, we didn't convert any of those 20 bookings. They were rubbish leads or they were bad leads. And it's very easy for us to sit there and say, well, you know, like they must have all, like they could have all been bad. But I think from one perspective I personally bring, and I think you can probably relate to this, is when you work in a clinic, you know that the consultation is the make or break.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bit that clinics really struggle with. And I think not all clinics, and we were talking about it earlier, dental in particular are very, very good at converting, and their numbers are much higher than the clinics we have within aesthetics. And I think it's the lack of training. Yeah. So do you have any tips or advice around that, like how people can sort of implement some training into their consultation process for their team, their staff?
Yeah, I think consultation is key. Never rush the consultation. You might think, oh, you know, I'm overrunning or whatever, but never ever rush the consultation, because as soon as you do a thorough consultation, in theory, you should have a patient for life at that point. So never ever rush that. But I think making sure that whoever's doing the consultation is educated about everything that you offer in clinic is really, really important as well. So being able to provide maybe 2 or 3 different treatment options for the patient is really important. I think it's always important to ask the patient's budget, because if you don't ask the patient's budget, you could be trying to sell them something that's way out of their budget or way under their budget, for example. And if it's under their budget, that's not a bad thing, because you can then look at other technologies that you can bring in that to take the result from there and take it higher. So I always think that that's important, asking budget and asking them what their realistic expectations actually are, and saying like, look, with this treatment, I know I've seen results, like I know what this treatment can deliver. So talking about other case studies, I think is really important. But I think you need to know all the different treatment pathways that you can go down and give patients some options as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't do that when they walk into a consultation. Like obviously we're doing campaign usually for one device, but I always say just don't discount your leads, because they might not be suitable for that device, but you probably have something else in clinic that will work.
Definitely. And I think educating them, because a patient may come to you and say, I've seen X device advertised, I really want that treatment. My friend had that treatment, it worked really, really well. But just because your friend had that treatment doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work the same for you. So take the time in a consultation to speak to the expert that you're talking to and tell them what you're looking to achieve, where your starting point is, and then they'll create, you know, a treatment plan that's actually going to work for you.
So yeah, there's been a huge demand in longevity treatments we've spoken about, from biohacking, regenerative medicine. Do you think aesthetic clinics that aren't currently offering it need to start thinking about offering it and planning for that?
Absolutely. And I always say to clinics, you need to start thinking about future-proofing your business, because you've seen how many people do Botox and fillers now. It's like as common as going and getting your nails done. Whereas 8 years ago, it wasn't like that whatsoever. There'd be maybe a couple people doing it, but it would never be as saturated as it is now.
Yeah.
And it literally has become so trivial, like, I'm just going to get a manicure, I'm just going to get a pedicure. That's how it's become. So you're not offering any point of difference. And not only are you not offering any point of difference, you're actually doing your patients a disservice, because you're not providing them with what they need to have for their overall health. And I think medical aesthetics, the industry is moving it's moving away from improving only externally. Now we're thinking about, we are aging externally, but we've got to think, how we look on the outside starts within the inside. So if we're doing nothing to reverse the internal aging process, it doesn't matter what you do on the outside to improve like fine lines and wrinkles or reduce fat. You need to really start thinking about things on a cellular level. And I always say, like, look, we are living a lot longer. It's fact. Human beings are living a lot longer. But we don't want to be living longer and be spending 15 to 20 years of those extra years, in a way, in chronic illness. We want to be doing something that we can enjoy those additional years that we have. So I think definitely over time, more and more clinics, like even if you go to conferences within the industry now, they've got specific sectors for like functional medicine, for longevity, which is great, because the more we keep harping on about this, the more that clinics will be coming on board. And it has to start with the clinic, because the clinic needs to be responsible for educating the patient. What I said to you earlier about how there's this big north and south divide, that doesn't mean that we've just given up or we've just stopped educating, people about what's there. But it takes time for people to be ready to listen to that information.
I'm going to move on to sort of more about you personally and your project. So one of them is regifting beauty.
Yes.
So I want to talk a bit about that. So tell me a bit about it. How did it start? What's it about? I want to hear everything.
So Regifting Beauty is a domestic abuse awareness campaign, and we first launched it in 2019. And what it basically is, it's a campaign where if you go in your bathroom cupboard, you've probably got items within there that you don't use, that are unopened. They've maybe been gifts, or you've received like samples from somewhere, or like tester products. So this whole idea came around saying, well, you've got so many products there you just don't use, that are just sitting there taking up space. So we created this campaign called the Regifting Beauty campaign, whereby you can donate these unwanted items, and we work with different charities where they will redistribute them and regift them to survivors of domestic abuse. And this year was the first year that we've kind of appealed to men as well. So for years, it was mainly just focused around women. But throughout the years, we were getting comments, and I was personally getting comments saying, why are you disregarding men? Domestic abuse happens to men as well as women. So we've included men this year. We've been encouraging men to donate, and also we're going to gift, obviously, the boxes that we've collected to men as well. So there's that mix there. But I think from doing the campaign, I don't realize how many women actually suffer from domestic abuse, and doing something so small by giving them like a skincare item, for example, or a bath item might sound trivial, but it's something so small, like a small act of kindness, that can really, really give someone their dignity back and make them feel like human again. So something so small. So that's a great campaign that we're doing, and I've got visions of what I'd like to do like next year for it, like maybe do some like fundraising gala and really build it up, because it's such an important campaign. So it's gone national like this year, and we just really want to keep building on the momentum for that. And I think it'd be great to have like something like universal, like that the whole industry can get involved with, because it's a really important topic.
It really is. And like you said, it's giving people their dignity and their confidence back, like something really small, but it does make you feel good. Exactly.
And that's the whole concept behind this whole industry that we're in. It's about doing things that are going to help to improve the way people look, which ultimately improve how they feel. It affects their career, their confidence level, relationships. So that's the whole reason we're in the industry. And the people that are in the industry for the right reasons, they all have that same ethos, which is great. But I do think that we can do something more collaboratively. So that's my goal for like next year, to maybe launch something like that.
Exciting. Amazing. So obviously you're busy with that. You've got so much on. I don't understand how you have any time, because you've also got a podcast.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
We haven't even touched on that yet. The Late Aesthetics Show.
Yeah.
So obviously, I want to hear about why you started that podcast, what inspired you to do it. Obviously, you're on a podcast now, so you're used to speaking. So tell us about that.
So it was something that I thought about for quite a while. And again, I think in life, you need to make sure your timing is right. You need to make sure you get the right timing. So I thought about doing it for a while, wasn't the right timing. And my whole concept with the podcast is to interview the top surgeons, top doctors, top nurses, practitioners in the industry, and get their take on trending topics, debunking myths, what's good, what's not, and to educate consumers. Look, if you're thinking about eye rejuvenation, this is what you need to be thinking about. If you're thinking about lymphatic drainage, not all lymphatic drainage massage is the same. If you're thinking about getting a surgical nose job, again, there's risks associated with that. So listen to the experts about what they can obviously tell you about that. So it's a big education platform.
No, it's really good. I personally have watched a few episodes and find it really, really interesting. And as I said to you, like off camera, that I actually learned something. Like watched one, I was like, oh my gosh, game changer.
Well, I learn as well. Every time I interview someone, there's always something that I learn, which is amazing. And I had a really great doctor on there, Sarah Jenkins, and she's a big advocate for women's health. And women's health is another topic within our industry that's not spoken about enough, but now we're getting traction with it. So there's so much anyone can learn by listening to the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. And I like the fact that it's not just for industry, it is for consumers as well. And I can see that growing massively, because people don't have a platform that you can trust. That's what it is. Like,
Exactly.
TikTok's full of so much. Like, it's great information. There's some dermatologists in particular that I follow that I absolutely love, and I will listen to them.
Yeah.
But there's not one place that I could go for the other side of things, like women's health, or like, should I try this new treatment?
Yeah.
And it's a good platform for that. And you have such good guests. Like, your
Thank
guests
you.
are really, really good.
No, the guests have been fantastic. So yeah, just keep growing that and getting different takes on things as well. So my next thing, I think I want to get some celebrities on there and a doctor on there, and then have kind of like an open panel discussion about what they think they know, but actually, is it true? So that's the next thing that I'd like to do with that.
Well, I will be tuning in. I'm already a fan. So welcome to the confessionals. We're taking it to a different tone. We're going to talk about patience. I do have a question for you, but we've just discussed that you're going to listen to one of my crazy patient stories. So obviously I'm going to change names because I don't want to get sued. I'll keep the pronoun because it makes more sense. But yeah, I'll tell you and it'll be interesting to get your reaction on how you would deal with this in clinic as well. So I used to work in a clinic where it was very like hard sales, I would say. Like, we had to sell. We would get someone in for a consultation and we either had to sell them a package or product. We could not, like, we'd get in trouble if they left with nothing. And we ran really like quite aggressive Facebook ads, I can be honest now. And we would get people come in and they would think, oh, I'm getting a free consultation, similar. They would pay a deposit and they would get it either refunded or I think they could use it redeemably. Anyway, this lady came in and she was really sweet. And I did the initial consultation and I said, you know, like, you should really go home with at least a product. She was like, I can't afford it. You know, I can't afford the treatment's also fine, but I really think you should take home a product because basically you need to start looking after your skin. She didn't even use SPF, bare minimum. So anyway, I sent her back because I used to do the consultations and then send them back with the therapist to do the treatment because they got a free facial as well. So anyway, she did the treatment. She bought, I think it was a moisturizer or something. So obviously I've, at that point, left. I've got nothing to do with it. So she goes away. All is good. She's happy. She's got a little bag. All good. So about 6 weeks later, she comes back and she's got the bag. And I was like, okay. And I'm behind the desk by chance. And she was like, hi, I want to get a refund. And I was like, okay. For what? And she was like, for the product. So I thought, oh, okay. She obviously didn't use it, blah, blah, blah. I opened it up. It's empty. She'd completely emptied it. Like, and when I mean empty, she'd gone round the edge. You know, you can tell like they've literally taken everything out. So I was like, well, I can't refund you because you've used the product. She was like, yeah, but it didn't get rid of my wrinkles. And I was like, so where did you get that? She was like, oh, the therapist told me it would get rid of my wrinkles. But what she'd misunderstood is that the treatment that she had originally tried to push her to sell, well, to buy, would have not necessarily got rid of them. You know, like,
softened.
Improved it. I think it was radio frequency or something like that. And she was livid because I would not give her a refund. And I was like, my hands are tied. Like, I physically cannot give you a refund because you've used it. She picked it up out of the bag and threw it at me.
Oh, wow.
At my head. And it bounced off, pinged. And I was like, okay, well, what do I do in this instance? So obviously I panic. I'm getting stressed. I was like, I'm going to have to call the police. Like, legit, 'cause she wouldn't leave. So she ended up locking the front door because she was so angry. No one was allowed to leave. The police turned up. They're like trying to get into the clinic. Like, she's holding
you hostage
Pretty
much.
The clinic
over a moisturizer.
Yep. Because she didn't get rid of her wrinkles. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
That's actually like, that could be a good Netflix series. That's crazy.
I know. So how would you have dealt with that? Like, how do you deal with that though?
Oh, do you know what? There's been situations where, listening to you like say that, where people have come in and shouted at front of house because the treatment's not worked or they've had to move the appointment or something like ridiculous like that. And it's like, look, we're all human. And probably no one said, I guarantee you that this cream is going to get rid of your wrinkles. There's no way anyone, that wouldn't come out of anybody's mouth in a clinic. Like, it just wouldn't. There's no way. So you'd have to obviously, probably the way I would deal with it and be like, look, you know, your skin's probably more hydrated than it is from when you first started using the product. But at no point does it say on that cream it's going to remove all your wrinkles. It probably said something like moisturizing on the actual thing. So I'd be like, don't know where you got that information from. Apologize if you maybe, you know, misheard something, but we didn't guarantee you that. So would you like to buy another one?
Your skin looks amazing, by the way.
But I would probably be like, but what are you talking about? Look how glowing your skin is.
Do you know what? And genuinely, like, I'm thinking back, her skin did look good. Like, you know, when she walked in, I was happy to see her because I was like, oh wow, maybe she's here to like get treatment now because her skin looks great. No,
but taking someone hostage over a cream is like next level. Why would you do that?
It's not even the first time. Like, I could sit and tell 100 stories about that clinic in particular, because we were pushing people to buy. You got a lot of like pushback later. It was like I'd go home, think about it, and be like, well, that was wrong for me.
Well, well done for being able to sell to them, because if 9 times out of 10 though, you will see an improvement. Like, of course you'll see an improvement, especially if you go from using a cosmetic that isn't really doing a lot to your skin to start using something that's actually going to make a difference. You'll see that. Yeah, we've had it like with people like that starting on retinol, and they've, like, for example, we might have sold them like a retinol, a vitamin C, and let's say, I don't know, like something like really hydrating, for example, and they go and they've never used anything on their skin before, and then they use all 3 products in one go, and they're like, my skin is red, it's irritated. I'm like, but what did you do though? Well, I just used like, and people are not using small amounts. They tell you they are, but they're not, because they're so used to like smothering stuff on that when they start actually using something with active ingredients, their skin's like, whoa, what's happening? So you need to gradually build it up, especially if you've not done anything.
So true. I see that like quite often on socials. They'll be like, oh, I reacted to this product, and it's like, well, when you break it down, what else were you using with that product? Or, you know, if someone gets their eyebrows waxed and they use retinol, and then they'll blame the beautician or beauty therapist because they've had a reaction. It's like, well, you were using retinol.
Exactly.
But education. It's all about education. But I've got a question for you. Yes. Is the patient always right?
No.
Tell us more.
No, because the patient is great, right? But the patient is ultimately coming to you because you're an expert in your field. And if you're an expert in your field, it's your job to give that patient some additional information that they maybe didn't have before they came to you. So going back to that, if the patient thinks one treatment is suitable for them, the answer may be no, for various reasons: lifestyle, what they would like to achieve, medical history, for example. So the patient's not always right, and the patient needs to learn from the practitioner that they're going to, because at the end of the day, they do that day in, day out. So if you're not doing it day in, day out, there's no way you would possibly know as much information. So always listen and learn from your practitioner.
Vanessa, thank you so much for sharing all of your amazing insights. I feel like genuinely we could talk for hours
all day long.
There's so much more I wanted to ask, but I was like, I'll keep you here all day otherwise. But thank you so much. Yeah, definitely do a part 2. So if you want to tell people where they can find more about you, your podcast, Regifting Beauty, just sell it down the lens.
So if you do want to connect with me about anything aesthetics wise, follow me on Instagram. I feel Instagram is the easiest way to connect with people. My Instagram handle is Miss VL Brown, and my podcast is The Late Late Aesthetics Show.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We'll definitely have you on again soon.
Thank you so much.
Love hearing the real stories behind the aesthetics, medical and dental industries? Make sure you follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Patient Is Always Right for exclusive content. You can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to watch the full episodes on YouTube. Hit follow, subscribe, and stay tuned.